that time. So thanks for coming, first of all. And we've never done this before, and I don't know if we'll do it again, but we'll find out if it's something you like or you didn't like. So the idea came just to talk about the end of the year, to do instead of doing something for the what's happening, starting the new year. We're closing out 224, and we want to close it out with God on our heart, and we want to close it out with communion. And just from my own personal experience, this has been a wild year. I'm ready to see it go in some ways, but some of the most miraculous things have happened too. So if you're like me, you've probably had some type of roller coaster, but I'm usually ready to get into that next year. And so me and Amy had seen a deal on the Bread of Life, and it was just a real simple little deal, and we thought, man, that'd be fun to share. And Amy really had the idea, and we just kind of took off with it. And Johnny said it'd be all right, and the elders approved it. We thought, well, we'll give this a try. So tonight's just basically going to be a music. We're going to have music and songs between some stuff. We're going to have a couple where you sing, and then some where we just sit and contemplate while the music's playing. The lyrics have been picked for the song, so kind of take it in. They're not random songs. And then we'll darken down the lights when the first part of this is over, and we go to the communion, and then the boys will be serving communion for us and leading us in those prayers, and then Johnny will close us out. It'll probably take us about 30 minutes. You want to start? So Amy's going to talk to us a little bit about some of these breads.
I'm not used to talking like this. So the special that we had watched was about all the different breads and what they meant in different parts of the world. And one of the reasons that Jesus was, talked about himself being the bread of life is once we got researching this bread, we realized how important, what a huge part of their lives bread is. So I just brought an assortment of breads and thought I'd tell a little bit about each one. This bread is called lavash, and it is made. They eat this 3 times a day. For breakfast, it is from Armenia. Pickled vegetables or pieces of meat, they'll have that for breakfast. Then as it kind of like our croutons, as they dry out, they continue to use it, and they crumble it and put it in there. They date from the 5th century to, I think, the old 11th century. But so these breads have been being consumed by people in the Middle East for thousands of years. This and it is this. Oh, it's coming apart. This is half of it. It comes in. I bought all these breads. I didn't make these, by the way. It's a piece about this big, and that's one of the things I found that was pretty interesting about all these. They're a communal. One piece of bread is set out at the table, and everyone takes part of, just getting their own portion. But this is real similar to this type bread, but it's made with whole wheat. The kernels, the wheat pieces are left whole. So it's got a little bit more fiber in it, but it's basically the same type of bread. This bread is also called stone bread, and the version this was one of the breads that they used, and it's called stone bread because each soldier was required to carry a certain amount of rocks in his pocket to wherever they were going. Then when they got there, they built a tiny little oven, or not a tiny little oven. It was a pretty good size oven because it giant pieces of bread. So they would empty the pockets, build the stove, and then the bread was baked, and that's what they would live on while they were camped for whatever they were doing, whether it be practicing or whether they were getting ready to go to war or whatever. So this bread is still eaten in but the area where it would actually came from They don't eat it anymore because when the Russian, not the Russian, the Soviet Union came in the 20s, they made this type of bread illegal. You had to buy your bread from a bakery, and so they don't eat this kind of bread anymore. The bakeries, the government sanctioned bakeries took over the making of all of the bread. So they didn't bake bread in their own homes anymore. They had to go and purchase it. This bread, we've all probably seen this, is pita bread, and this is considered, they think this is probably the oldest bread. However, the first pita breads didn't puff like, how ours, whenever they split open, that came on late. But they have found this, they believe the kind of bread that the Bedouins ate, which Abraham was a Bedouin. And so this type of bread, this little flat bread, has been around for a long time. And they believe that this is the first bread that was traded for other goods. So the Bedouins kind of perfected this bread, and everybody liked it. And so they learned that they could trade something as simple as bread for other necessities that they needed. This bread is something that you can purchase commercially, but the recipe for it is in the Bible. It's Ezekiel bread, and this was the bread that the recipe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Daniel's army, he gave them this recipe, and this was the bread that they were supposed to eat that was supposed to help make them strong. There's no flour in this. There are lots of grains, and there's beans and different things, lots more protein in this bread. And this is the bread that we actually eat at home. We've gotten used to it. It's rough when you first start eating it, but you do get used to it over time. This bread, so that kind of covers the Middle Eastern breads. This bread is called a panettone, and it's from Italy, and it just is kind of a good example of a sweet bread. It's got fruit in it. It's kind of the precursor to our fruit cake, but it's something that I thought was interesting about this is that they're so serious about this bread in Italy that by law you cannot call it a panettone unless it's 16% butter. So this is 16% butter, which seems like a lot, but if you've ever made a pound cake, you know that by our, the old-fashioned way, a pound of sugar, a pound of butter, and a pound of eggs, we have way more than 16% in our pound cake, but it's still a very rich cake. And then the pretzels, I thought Chuck and I made pretzels this afternoon. There's lots of different stories that go along with the pretzels, different theories, but there is actual evidence that the monks, and I can't remember what, 11th century, maybe not quite that old, but maybe somewhere in there is that monks made these for children that learned their prayers. This was a reward for them, and that's one of the stories that you hear, but there is truly some evidence that is true, that's what these were made for. So that's the reason that they're the shape that they're in. Ours are not perfect by any means, but it was supposed to be, something like that. But and then this is just an American loaf of bread, and our bread is this is my mother's recipe. It has milk. It has oil, it has eggs, it's a nice, rich, heavy bread, and this type of bread kind of came around during the Victorian era, where they all these different recipes of bread, they got the best of all of them, and that's the bread that we enjoy most of the time at home, is something similar to this. Anyway, that's all I have.
So these breads she was talking about, what we did is we kind of did a stat thing. And the stats are for basically to help you visualize. So what I'd like you to do is visualize with me why this is important, then I'll explain why we did it. So you got to hang with me on this part. So one of the things we did is we took a pound. This is a standard 1 pound loaf. It produces in a regular slice, not a thin slice, but a sandwich slice, about 19 slices. So even though these are all breads, so we could visualize the bread theory and the amount that different people consume to see how important bread is in our diet worldwide. There is no people that do not eat some type of bread. Mostly Asian people eat the least, but there's no people that don't eat a bread. None in the world. So if it's got a grain in it and it's made into a dough and it's cooked, that's bread. So it becomes a bread. So we took and said, okay, if they eat 44 pounds of bread per capita, which is per person in that country, then we took and times that time 19, we divided it by 3 meals a day, 365, that's 1,095. So then you came up with how many slices of bread per meal. So what I want you to visualize is these numbers, some of them sound low, but what we're talking about is how much bread Greeks, Italians, whoever eats per meal at 3 meals a day. Some may shock you, some may not. The Armenians, as Amy said, I started with that one because she started with that bread. The Armenians take in 4.5 slices of bread. Visually, whatever we call that bread, the equivalent of that at every single meal. In contrast to us, what do you think we take in? We take in a half slice. If you're going to talk about every meal, 3 meals a day, so we take in 1.5 slices a day, every single day. That means bread is probably pretty important to our diet. So I'm going to give you a couple more just statistic-wise so you can just kind of feel how that lands. And I'm going to put on my glasses if I brought them. No, I didn't. Wait a minute, I know I have these things. Okay, I don't need them. I can get it done. In Israel, okay, good. Here's a good example of around the globe. In South Africa, they would take in 9/10, so almost a whole slice at each meal. Once again, every 3 times a day, 365 times. Israel takes in 4.6 slices. That is 13.8 slices of bread a day. The equivalent of that up. So they're going by pounds of flour that they use or pounds of grain, whatever they buy to make their bread. Russia, 1.9. The U.S., half. We take 1.5 a day. The Chinese would take in almost a slice a day, not quite. They're a quarter. In Ireland, it's 1.9, so they'd be tipping on 6 slices a day in bread. The French, which I thought this would be the high number, the French and Italians, because they have the best bread. 1.7 for the French, the Italians 1.5, so they're right at almost 5 to 6 slices a day. The Greeks 2.4, so they're right at 7.2 slices per day of bread. Brazil, it's down to they're almost the smallest intake, which is weird. South America and Asian countries are the smaller intake because they use rices more. So that Brazil is like 1/8 of a slice. So in a day, they take in maybe a half slice, not quite, per day. India is about 1/4 of a slice. Mexico and the rest of South America is about 1 slice per meal. So they could be as much as 3 per day. Turkey's the topper. And do you know where Turkey is? Where Turkey is right now would be, let me see if I can say it right. Got this here. A lot to remember. It's where Anatolia was. And Johnny probably recognized that. Anybody else recognize Anatolia? In the creation story, when God is making these rivers that go around these lands, in first of Genesis, Anatolia is one of the lands. That is where Turkey is. So that's center of holy country, a lot of it, And Turkey is 6.9 slices per meal. So they use bread in religious ceremonies. They use bread in everything. I mean, everything. Now, they have kind of more of a flat bread, but they're consuming it. Britain, it's a half slice, and Bulgaria is 4.5. It's you're talking people that take in like almost a loaf of bread per individual person. So if I'm guessing, like in our household, somebody's taking in like 2 loaves and somebody's taking in less, because I've got this meter on. I can't take in much bread, and it's going off with my blood sugar. So why all this? Why these statistics? Why trying to recognize what the stats and what we're talking about? Well, what we're talking about is Jesus says, because Israel is almost 12 slices a day, he says, I'm the bread of life. Because if you went to these people, especially people that take in 12 slices a day, and said, we're taking your bread from you, it's more, they use it more than they do meat, more than they do vegetables. It's not seen at any meal ever. So when you think about that, Jesus is saying, I don't want to be missing from anything in your life ever. I want to be the bread to your life. It's the woman at the well. And so the reason this comes back to communion is when the Lord's Supper started, these guys are probably having water, and they've got wine here, and they've got breads. They're probably a couple different breads. That wasn't uncommon then. And so they've got this bread, and Jesus uses this bread to make an illustration. But I want to back up on an important illustration before it so we can tie this together. One of the other illustrations is the woman at the well, where Jesus talks about water. Water and bread. We can live on that. We run out of food. Can't live forever. Now this one Ezekiel bread, because it has proteins in it, beans, you can actually live on it for quite a while. It's not that great. But there's a reason he gave them that recipe, because it has something the rest don't. But you can live on water and bread. You can't live without water. And because these are so essential, we take them for granted. But they didn't take it for granted there. When the woman's at the well, and he goes, you've just come here for water. But he says, I can give you a water where you'll never thirst again. Well, that must have sounded like, what? I'd like to know more about that. And that's why these are essentials. Jesus is not talking about fluff. He's not talking about something rich people have and poor people don't. Some people have, some people don't. He nails it. Water. Everybody, everywhere on this planet has to have water. He nails it. Bread. It's a cheap, inexpensive thing you can make with very few, down to 2 ingredients, would that be right? 3. You need 3 ingredients, and you can make bread, and you can fill a stomach. Prophets throughout the Old Testament, more than once, they got down to a last thing, and what did they do? A last stitch of grain. I can think of 2 stories right off the top of my head. We're not going to start a whole other sermon. But where the prophet said, take that last bit of oil and that last bit of grain and make a loaf of bread. We'll eat and then we'll die. That was last words there. And don't you think it's odd that Jesus says, let's eat this, let's share this together, and then he's going to die. The Bible doesn't do anything on accident. There's no accidents. These threads go through the Bible so you can see them, and you almost think, is that a story they wrote down again, or I read again? But it's part of what's prophecy. God uses all this stuff to be a reminder. And if you eat that bread that much, and this reminds you of your relationship with Christ, you're probably going to stay on track, because he's going to be up here a lot and in here a lot. So we're going to conclude this part, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into communion. So how we're going to do communion is going to be a little different. We're going to play a song, and this song is about forgiveness. I'd like you, if you don't mind, I'm not telling you what to do, I'm requesting it, to take in these lyrics. Because there's something important said before this table sometimes that we forget about. And it was that if you have a problem with a brother, if you have any type of unforgiveness, you leave this worship right here and you go to that brother if you can. If they're in this room, if they're in another place, and you work that problem out. They may not let you work it out on their end, but you work it out. If they're not here and you can't do that, then you in your heart, before you take at this table, forgive that. If you've got something you're not forgiving, you need to forgive it. It says not to take this, not to share this, until you've done that. Why would that be? Is it for the other person? Obviously not. They don't even know if you're working with that God and they won't give you a chance, or they're not alive, or whatever the situation is for you. The Spirit cannot dwell in a dark house. Not the Spirit of the Lord. And this is where we start talking about the Holy Spirit. God starts telling, Jesus tells him, I'm leaving, and I'm leaving after I leave. I got to be gone first. Something is coming to replace me. And when I die, it will be there, and you'll understand all of it. We have the ability to understand it all, but we can't. We're blocking it. We're asking God to live in a dirty house if we don't forgive people, because we want to be forgiven. And he says that clearly. Forgive. To be forgiven, you have to do what? You have to forgive. So this song, we're gonna turn the lights down a little bit in a minute. Don't do it till I get off of here. Now we're gonna turn the lights down a little bit. We're gonna play this song, and then after the song, after a while, after the song ends, right? Then you guys will come down here, and what we're gonna do is commune a little different. We're all sitting out here, and that's fine. We're gonna do it different this time. You're gonna come down and get the bread and the cup, and don't take either one. Then I want you to sit somewhere around this stage on these chairs. If you're young enough, you can sit on the stage. If you need a chair, I don't want you going back down there. I want us all up here together tight. And then one of the boys is going to pray for the bread, and then you'll take your bread. You're just going to have these things in your hand. Just hold on to them for a while. Then we'll pray for the cup. We'll take the cup. Then I'll get up and I'll pray us to be done. We'll have a closing song that we can sing along with that has some repeat lyrics, and then Johnny will dismiss us. When we're dismissed, if you stay around just for a minute, you don't have to stay around any set amount of time. We have these breads and some stuff back in the fellowship hall, and we'd like you to come take some, even if you can't stay. Come grab some. I think, Amy, did you get some bags? Some bags. You could throw some bread in there, so you can test it and try it and talk about it. Maybe you could share communion with somebody else at home, or with someone else in your family, or a friend, or somebody else. Where two or more are gathered in his name. Okay? So think about forgiveness. Focus on forgiveness during this forgiveness song, and then we'll start this communion. All right?
It'll clear the bitterness away. It can even set a prisoner free. There is no end to what its power can do. So let it go and be amazed by what you see through eyes of grace. The prisoner that it really frees is you. Forgiveness. Forgiveness.
What's mine is yours. You are not alone. There is no shortage here. The love of Jesus satisfies.
this bread, we do so in remembrance of you. Everybody will take the bread.
Thanks for coming by with me then. Dear Father, we just thank you for the privilege to come before you and partake of the Elizabeth's table, and especially as we start the new year as well, to start that off the right way, thinking about you and the sacrifice that your Son made on the cross for us. So let's remember that the love that he has shown when he went to that cross for all the world, and he shed his blood on that cross as that perfect sacrifice for all of us. Even though he didn't deserve to die, he went there willingly and went to that cross for all of the world. So let's remember to take these emblems and just go through this new year to remember those things that he's done for us and continues to do for us, to wash away our sins from all the world. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
You'll bow your head in prayer. Dear Father, thank you for 224. My faith, like many people in this room, got me through 224. My hope will get me through 225. But your love will get me through life. I pray this prayer of thanksgiving in your name. Amen. You have a song you can kind of have, it has a repeat part on it. I'm just going to do that, and you can repeat. And then Johnny will close us out.
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine on you. May the Lord make his face to shine on you. And be gracious to you. And be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance on 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 you. May he keep you in perfect peace. May he keep you in perfect peace.
Before Johnny closes, what's important about that prayer is it's not just any prayer. Moses received that prayer from God, and he handed that prayer to Aaron. And that's a message from the Maker.
Well, I don't know how to follow that. You know, I don't know, Chuck, you intended for it to be this way, but you had to break the bread away from the bread. And that's what we have to do in life. We have to break away from the world to become a part of the body of Christ. There's a piece of scripture is taken from John, Gospel of John, chapter 15. I believe it's verse 5. It says, "He who abideth in me and I in them shall produce fruit. He who does not abide in me shall produce nothing." This church has been so blessed. And 2024 has been such a wonderful and miraculous year in so many ways for this little tiny church. And I've said this over and over and over again. Dynamite comes in small packages. And what God is doing in this church is just incredible. And this communion today, forgiveness